authorities among these 13 or so different federal agencies that can that are in support of improving urban waters. And then one area that actually, unfortunately, I don't have a slide on, but one that will be in your SUFC Hill materials next week, and we'll be getting those out to you soon, is as a program at the U.S. Department of Ag, the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, APHIS, and that is a program called the Early Plant Pest Detection and Surveillance Program, and it's essentially, just as the title suggests, it's a program at APHIS that is designed to start to keep some of the problematic pests out of the country, but then, you know, once they're here, that program has a role in helping slow or prevent the spread of those problematic pests. So we'll have a fact sheet out, or a leave behind as we call it, out to you all that explains in more detail these programs, and we'll have a set of talking points that Rebecca referred to that'll be for your use as you're making Hill visits, kind of a reference set of talking points that you can all look to kind of keep a consistent message among all of our visits next week. So we've talked a little bit, or you know, Rebecca set the stage a little bit about a lot of the budget uncertainty here on Capitol Hill. You guys will be making Hill visits in the middle of next week, when Congress is trying to figure out how to deal with the sequestration. But you know, as Congress moves forward on a new farm bill and on appropriating funds for some of these programs that we just spoke about and went through here, we want to convey the importance of those programs to the congressional members and staff that we meet with. You know, as important in sharing these programs with Hill staff is to build that relationship with those Hill staffers. You know, so that's a big part of what we're trying to do next week. In some cases, we'll be building new relationships, and in other cases, for those of you who have attended SUFC visits, Hill visits in the past, or on your own, it's a chance to, you know, maintain some of those existing relationships, and these relationships will be important when Congress moves forward on a farm bill and appropriations work in the coming year. You know, one of the roles that the SUFC can play is, and has played, is keeping you all informed of opportunities to weigh in with House and Senate members when these issues are before Congress. So you know, next week we'll really be accomplishing a number of things, including that, you know, we want to convey the importance of these programs, their role in keeping healthy urban forests. We want to be building those relationships and maintaining those relationships so that when we need to come back to some of those offices as Congress starts to consider a farm bill and fiscal 14 appropriations, that we have that relationship in place, and then when the SUFC sends out any type of alert that you might receive, that you can in turn reach out to those Hill staff that you've met with as part of the SUFC Hill visits and share more specific recommendations. So with that, I think it's Carrie's on the podium now, and I'll turn it over to her.
Great, thanks, Jake. I'll let Sarah move to the final slide. So many times during the comments that you've been hearing from my fellow panelists, you're hearing reference to the SUFC, and for a majority of the individuals who are on the phone today, half of you will not be in DC with us next week and are using this information for visits to your capital in your own home state and to the offices of the members of Congress in your own home state. You should know that on a national level, ACTrees is a very active member of the Sustainable Urban Forest Coalition and serves on its policy working group. So many times when you hear Jake and Becky talk about SUFC, you could actually take the words Alliance for Community Trees and put them in there just as easily, because we've been so actively involved and so supportive of the work of the coalition and other stakeholder organizations like National Association of State Forests and American Forests in the work that we're all trying to do and leveraging our power together. The interesting piece for us to look at is what the difference can be when there is a local voice at that table for those meetings. And certainly that happens at the local level and state level in your home districts. But when you're sitting in the Washington offices and meeting with a legislative aide, a chief of staff, or a member of Congress, either a senator or somebody from the House, the voice of a local constituent, a voting representative from their district, carries incredible weight. And it's very valuable that your voice is so valuable because you're not only a member of their district and voting in their district, you also carry that portfolio of being a member of Alliance for Community Trees and part of this Sustainable Urban Forest Coalition, this larger effort that really is making a difference in the advocacy on the Hill. But I wanted to draw forth just a couple of connections between these national issues and what is actually happening on the ground and why we do care so much. While I'm probably commenting on these things to a very converted audience of public policy advocates, it's an important message for you to share with your colleagues in our member organizations in your neck of the woods. So consider the energy conservation work and the funding that comes from the Fed to the state level, and also from the local corporate level into the communities. I'm thinking about the Trees Forever work with Alliant Energy, where they collaborated on some very strategic tree plantings to do energy conservation by planting shade trees. So that's one example of funding come from multiple sources, also from the Fed, to accomplish that. Jake mentioned the EPA Urban Waters Initiative by the 13 government agencies. That initiative is being run in pilot cities right now, and I believe 3 of those cities have very strong Alliance for Community Trees member organizations who are working in a collaborative way with other stakeholders in their community on the local urban waters project. I'm thinking of one that's not very far from our offices here in College Park, Maryland, just up the road in Baltimore, Maryland, as one of the cities. So there's a very direct correlation to the benefit in the community for Baltimore from this Urban Waters Initiative that we're advocating for when we go on the Hill or in our meetings in the future. And another piece that's a very close relationship now and close to all of our hearts is the issue of forest invasives. And what I see in our communities is the tree care volunteers that many of our member organizations are training really are a community's first responders to invasives becoming present in their community. So as volunteers are out doing tree care and tree tending and pruning projects, they are the ones that actually can make the observation of an invasive presence in the street trees and neighborhood trees or trees in parks in their community, and can roll that up to actually advocate for action immediately at the local level. On the national level, of course, APHIS does that work on the early detection program. And I really do love, though, that there's a direct connection into our member organizations. While our tree care volunteers are the first responders, in that pool of responding organizations will be our member organizations attempting to look at the urban forest planning for their community and strategically replace those trees with trees of a more diverse nature and a more hardy nature to fight off the invasives that they've identified and the work that's being done. And then finally, I'll comment on that forest inventory and analysis work that's being done at the rural level, it's a direct counterpart to the work that many member organizations are doing at the local level with ACTrees. And I think it's going to be a very good hand-in-glove opportunity for painting that larger picture on forestry in general across the nation. And it will connect those rural stories that are being collected by the forest inventory and analysis work of Forest Service and others with the urban story that communities and specifically our member organizations are doing with ACTrees. So whether our member organization is a nonprofit or a city or a municipal agency, there's going to be great and very rich detail gathered together to help create this national picture. And it will all work to the good when we're trying to work on invasives, diversifying the urban forestry, and also complementing the gray infrastructure with green infrastructure to create these very, very healthy and verdant communities that we're looking for in the future. I'll stop there, and I'll just say I am delighted that many of you are going to be doing local advocacy work with the information you're gathering today. Some of the materials that you're hearing referenced now are going to be sent along and posted to our emails in the future and our e-newsletters in the future, so that you'll be able to easily download those materials. And also there'll be a resource in the resource section of this webinar. So once the webinar is posted to the actrees.org website, you'll be able to click and download these materials immediately. And I want to thank our partners in Sustainable Urban Forest Coalition and all the other member organizations for the great work that they're doing to help make our annual policy summit a great success. We look forward to seeing everyone in DC and in the future hearing on the work that you're doing locally. So I'll turn the floor back to Jen to moderate any questions with Leland, who's been taking those questions offline.
Fantastic. Thank you, Carrie, very much. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Rebecca. Let me just do a check-in, and I'm assuming somebody's still unmuted. Can you hear me, Carrie or Rebecca? Jake?
Yes.
Great, thank you. If anyone has any questions, I think Leland has been collecting them, and I'm waiting for Leland to get me some questions that are coming to me. But I'll take this minute just to say thank you, one, to all of our panelists, to all three of you for making the time, not only today to sit in, but almost on a weekly basis to work with your colleagues under SUFC banner and continually educate us about what's going on, what isn't going on in DC, and so that we can spread that information back to our extended membership. So I just want to echo what Carrie said, it's been extremely valuable to a number of our members and to the overall group, and more than happy to share that with Alliance Community Tree members and other audiences. I also want to thank Sarah Anderson specifically for kind of being the Oz behind the curtain today. I know that this is a new software system, or an expanded new software system for Alliance for Community Trees, and it takes a lot of coordination. So I very much appreciate that and getting us all lined up to be here today. And I look forward to seeing a number of you in DC next week, and Don Winsett as well. He's still on the phone but had to be muted. So we have a large turnout and expectation for our Advocacy Day next Wednesday on the 27th. And I hope that many of you will plan on doing follow-up visits too, especially after we hear what happens on March the 1st. So, Leland, I've got a question from Leland, and if for some reason I'm not reading all the questions or seeing them all, Leland, just jump online and share those, or Sarah. One of the questions I have here is, I have a couple visits where local staff of Congress folks were discouraged to ask us for money. How do we nuance this in our meetings? And I'm going to let either Carrie, Jake, and if Jake can be unmuted, that'd be great, and Rebecca respond to that.
Sure, this is Jake. I'll take a shot at that. Yeah, I think that'll be a pretty common reaction from Hill staff next week, and I think in part, and we'll build some of this into our talking points here, but we're not asking actually for any funding increases at this point, given the budget uncertainty and not knowing exactly where the president's budget's going to fall. So we're not not advocating any funding level at this point. So that's the short answer. I think and would anticipate that once we do see the president's budget, we will would likely be that the SUFC would be asking for flat funding for these programs in an environment where they're trying to scale back the size of federal spending, holding the line, maintaining flat levels for these programs would be considered a victory. So we're not going to be in there asking for increases, but rather to the extent that we can convey the importance of these programs, the important role that they have in in maintaining healthy urban forests and the importance that healthy urban forests have in water quality and all the other benefits. That's essentially where we're heading next week, is just trying to convey the importance of these programs and not asking for any funding increases.
And Jake, I assume that's going to be really the case regardless of what you're in advocating for. So next week when people are in D.C., they'll be advocating, many people will be there advocating for issues outside of urban forestry and environmental issues, but I think that's kind of the line that everyone is taking, is just talking about the importance and the value of their program, but not necessarily putting a dollar figure at this point. Is that correct?
That's right. And part of the value of these visits is that in some Hill offices next week, if we haven't met with them before, they'll be unfamiliar with these programs, and as they're trying to make decisions as to where to cut, it's helpful for them to know and hear from their constituents what areas of the federal government are important and what the role of those federal programs play in their own states and districts. And so, to the extent that you can, in your visits, convey the importance of those programs, that's a helpful information as these staff are looking which areas to really maintain funding and which areas to cut.
Thank you, Jake.
Leland, if I can just jump in really quickly. One of the things that we've heard a lot in past visits in terms of talking about the importance of these programs is if you can identify even a single project in your town or city or community that has received support or funding through one of these programs, be it the EPA Urban Waters Program or the Forest Service Urban and Community Forestry Program, if you can just identify a way that some of that funding has trickled down to your district, to your city, and can tell your staffer or member of Congress that you're meeting with, well, actually remember that park that we completely regreened, that came from dollars through our State Department of Natural Resources, which came from the U.S. Forest Service Urban and Community Forestry Program. That made a tangible difference in our neighborhood. Those are the kinds of local impacts that really connect with the people you'll be meeting with. So I just encourage you to try to find at least one story that you can talk about that's a really local, hit home why this matters for you and for the constituents in your area.
Yeah, I would echo that 100% from what Leland said, and even if you don't have one in your city or in the district, particularly as you meet with Senate offices, to point to an example in your state even is important.
Excellent point, Leland and Jake, thank you. And I would just pile on to that by saying when you're talking about something that's in your backyard, either literally or figuratively, it's amazing the difference, how it comes across, the enthusiasm, and how you light up, and that makes a connection, and that's heard and seen by the people that you're speaking to. So it really drives these points home, even if you're not aware of it. It certainly comes across, and I say that from sitting and observing this many times with a lot of people coming into D.C. who come in for the first time or come in on a regular basis. I have another question for our panelists. It says, sorry, it just disappeared. Are there any specifics on a bill's title or number that we want to point out? So kind of a technical question. So that goes back to, go ahead, Carrie, please.
Yeah, this is Carrie. Let me just quickly comment. The working group of SUFC, the policy working group, actually talked about this and determined that rather than speaking about specific bills, we needed to speak about specific issues, because the bills may be adjusted or dumped depending on the impact of the continuing resolution or the budget deliberations, and other riders would be added on to it. I think what you want to emphasize rather than specific bills is our interests and the language that they're going to see no matter what the bill is. They're going to see certain language in there about invasives, about green infrastructure and stormwater abatement, energy conservation through trees. They're going to see these kinds of phrases in legislation no matter what the numbers are. Now, you may have something very specific that you can speak to that affects your community, and then I'd encourage you to use those bills that you know about that are going to touch you personally. But I think we made a decision not to go towards specifics that way. I'll defer to Becky and to Jake for further comment.
Yeah, this is Jake. You know, this new Congress just it's less than a couple months old, and you know, as every new Congress comes into session, any bills and bill numbers from the previous Congress need to be reintroduced. So, you know, if there were bills of interest that you may have been familiar with last year, it's a pretty decent chance that a lot of those bills haven't been reintroduced yet in this new Congress. You know, in terms of the work that the SUFC has been doing in regard to the Farm Bill and on appropriations, those bills have not yet been reintroduced and assigned a number yet. So we're not really in a position to advocate for a specific piece of legislation yet. And that was part of the challenge in organizing the visits. As I mentioned, the work on the fiscal matters is really kind of holding everything up right now, and until that's resolved, that's what we're waiting for until we see bills introduced in regard to appropriations and the Farm Bill. So there really aren't numbers yet at this point. That's why, as Carrie mentioned, as a working group, we are recommending an approach here where we're just highlighting the importance of these programs right now, and then once the SUFC is aware of more specific bills introduced after the fiscal mess is clarified, then we can come back and alert you all as to what's going on, and then you can in turn follow back up with some of these Hill staff that you'll meet with next week.
Thank you, Jake. I'll try to squeeze in a few more questions here. One is, should the local organizations send this information that we're sharing now out with their membership base and encouraging them to get in touch with their elected officials, or should only the tree organization staff be making these meetings right now? In other words, how far and wide should local groups be spreading the word on these issues?
Well, I think, you know, I'm not to monopolize here, but anything, we're still working on our materials, the fact sheets and the talking points for next week. You'll all be seeing that here relatively soon, and you know, I'm comfortable sending that to anyone who's interested in seeing it and weighing in on it. I mean, the more the merrier as far as I'm concerned, and we can make those materials available for whoever's interested.
That's exactly right, Jake. This is Rebecca again. If you have members that are interested, the more congressional members hear from their constituents about how these are important issues to them, the better chance we have on making sure we maintain funding for these programs. So yeah, as Jake said, the more the merrier is exactly right.
Thank you. I have a question about FIA here, the Forest inventory assessment. Let me read it to you verbatim. It's a little bit of a long one. The cost for urban FIA are huge. This proposal has been on the table for years, but FIA thought states would fund it, and states wanted the feds to fund it. If we are advocating a zero-sum budget with a huge new program, what are we getting rid of?
So here again, I can take a shot.
Yeah, that's all you.
So and we maybe need to be more clear here in the talking points. I think, you know, we're boy, this is hard to get into without getting in the weeds. But the FIA program within the Forest Service is situated within a larger research program, and so, you know, there is some, I guess, some discretion there by the Forest Service as to, you know, where they would want to add on if they do to that FIA program. But I guess what needs to happen first is that there needs to be some direction from Congress that urban FIA is important, and so that's what has been a shared priority from the SUFC participants, to see an expanded urban FIA program that doesn't necessarily have to come from new money, if you will, because it can come from within a larger research budget. But that's not an official SUFC position, and we can clarify in our talking points how to handle that, and would flag Jen that we do that. That's a good suggestion.
Yes. All right, thank you. Liking that.
I mean, in the context of the Farm Bill, how this had played out in the last Congress anyways, was that there was direction in the last Farm Bill for the Forest Service FIA program to pull together a strategic plan. And in that strategic plan, the Forest Service was to look at what the resources and staffing that would be necessary for an urban FIA program, among other what are called enhancements to the FIA program. And so, you know, I think that's kind of what the SUFC had been supporting in the past, is that as the Forest Service is pulling together a strategic direction for the FIA program, what, you know, we need to know first what the resources are needed to do an urban FIA on a consistent basis across the country to get national data. But we should clarify, Jen, what in our talking points what we want to say about that.
Noted, Jake. Thank you. All right, great. Great, good questions. I have another question, and I'm going to lob this one to you, Rebecca.
Okay.
It's asking, with the sequester and the continuing resolution, everything looming, and drawing staffers' attention on the Hill, how do you suggest we do our requests in our meetings? And can you suggest some specific language or general language?
Okay. I think one thing that I do is I acknowledge the state of the Hill, and that going up front, that they don't know what the president's budget says. They're uncertain as to whether the sequestration will go through. So, not in an offhanded way, but kind of, you know, we understand that the situation is murky for everyone. What we're doing here today is telling you why the programs we support are important, and that we hope, you know, and leave it at that, rather than trying to help get any clarification from them as to whether, from the staffers, as to whether or not they have answers, because they usually don't. What do you think, Jim?
I'm sorry. What? Can you clarify the question again, or what was the question?
How do we address the fiscal climate during our talks, knowing that they are good, that the staffers are going to be unclear as to the situation as well?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on in what we said earlier. Is that we're just trying to convey the importance of these programs. You know, uh, the you know as a coalition, we're not the only coalition struggling with this exact question. With all of the fiscal uncertainty right now, until that all gets clarified, it's really hard to recommend anything because it's hard to know what Congress is going to do in regard to federal spending right now. And so, really, the only thing we can do is um, raise the importance of these programs so that folks know going into decisions regarding where to spend the federal taxpayers' dollars, that they are informed of, well, what does the forest health program do? What does the urban and community forestry program do? Uh, what is the urban waters initiative? In many cases they may not be familiar, and so hearing from their constituents the importance of these programs um, is really what we're trying to do next week, because really that's all we can do given all of the fiscal uncertainty.
Yeah, this is Carrie. I'd like to make a comment also about the timing of our trip to the Hill.
Good.
And our work. And as we looked at the calendar, there really is going to be no ideal time to be doing any kind of education and advocacy on the Hill this first half of this year. I think there will be a lot of turmoil in the next 2 quarters. And our goal on setting the date that we did was to make sure that the issues that are important to us and the programs that we value are front mind, are top of mind for those that are actually working behind the scenes on budget issues. So rather than waiting for the budget to come out or waiting for the impact later and then doing a reaction to it, proactively going ahead of the decisions and making sure that they know that their constituency is very interested in urban forestry and the health of urban forests, and is with them at this time to make sure that it stays on the list of funded work, no matter what budget they're looking at, what agency or what initiative's budget.
Great. Thank you for addressing that point, Carrie. And to the back of all of our minds, I know. Let me ask, I try to fit in 2 questions here. One, we've got about 5 minutes left, so let's answer this question quickly, and then I want to ask a question about the Farm Bill. What is the federal investment as a percentage of total investments in the community forest nationwide? So again, what's the percentage of federal investment in overall for community forestry? Is that a number that any of you know or could hazard a guess at?
Well, I mean, oh boy, I can tell you what the urban and community forestry program has been funded anywhere between, say, 27, 28 million and 30 million over the past 5 years or so. But I know that's a fraction as to what when you look at private and other, government contributions, and I'm sure it's yeah, I mean, it's not an insignificant amount that what the federal investment is through the urban program and through things like EPA's Urban Waters Initiative. But I don't give you a percentage, but I can give you numbers as to what the appropriation has been for that urban program. And as I said, it's been right around 27, 28, 30 million over the past 5 years or so.
Right, it has. And I'll also mention, too, if you look at the SUFC page for coalition activities and resources. There's an advocacy, there's information about advocacy and our past advocacy efforts, and it has at least listed the last couple of years of our asks from our fact sheets and leave behinds there. If you feel like digging backwards, let me squeeze in quickly a question about the Farm Bill. Let me find it, please. Bear with me. There's not a lot of information about the Farm Bill on these slides. How does the Farm Bill connect with our asks, and how do we work it into our meetings? And I think that's a good question that we might hear from a lot of people.
Yeah, and this
Rebecca.
this relates to the FIA question, so we need to clarify that the strategic direction for the FIA program, that was a Farm Bill ask, and the 10201 program, the early plant pest detection program, that was part of our Farm Bill platform as well in the last Congress, and the request there was to support the continuation of that program and funding for that program. So we can revisit those talking points to clarify some of this.
Yeah, and the urban and community forestry gets its authority from the Farm Bill.
Right.
That's correct.
So I think it might even be helpful if we did some kind of visual representation and showed all of the dotted and hard lines. So that's duly noted. Thank you. Thank you all for flagging that, and we'll follow back up with the three of you on that as well. Last question I think we might be able to just squeeze in here is, if they ask, I think staffers, should we suggest a place to cut? Isn't that a slippery slope and one we would want to stay away from? How should we answer that question from staff?
I get that question a lot, and I sidestep it as much as possible because they have to, they being the staffers and their bosses, have to look at the whole enchilada. They're looking at healthcare, they're looking at the entitlement programs, they're looking at all of these discretionary programs, the ones that aren't Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, and they want to know where we should cut. And I just say, I'm here representing Urban Forest Coalition. My job is to tell you why these programs are important. And, you know, read between the lines is it's your job to make these tough decisions.
That's right. I would answer that exact same way. I would say we don't, we're not prepared to offer as a coalition an area to cut, but we are here to share information about these programs as you are making spending decisions.
I would also, this is Carrie again, encourage people to say, I don't have an exact answer for you, but I'd love to have you receive some information from us about how trees and urban forestry impact a variety of areas in quality of life, the success of a community, and the sustainability of a community in the future. And I think there's a lot of good research. ACTrees has a fact sheet that we use that relates research to many different aspects of a successful community, from business to real estate to individual health. And so what my answer would be is, trees are really an answer for many challenges that face communities and people in the future. And I'll send you off a fact sheet that has resources, and you can choose, any of those pieces in the resources to tell you why trees and the work that we're doing is really vital to just about any topic you're addressing.
And
perfect.
A point on that.
Perfect. Yes, a perfect way to end, Leland. I hand it over to you.
Okay, and this is just referring back to the fact sheet that I think you all received and the SUFC has pulled together about our issues that we're going to be discussing in our meetings. It's right there at the top in our first priority about urban and community forestry program. It touches people in all 50 states in almost 7,500 communities all around the country. 84% of our country lives in urban and suburban areas. So this is a really broad-based impact that touches everybody. So we feel it's a very important program.
And just as a point of correction, ACTrees has been changing that percentage that is mentioned to up to 93% of the population of this country lives in major metro areas, rather than using the 84% number.
I think you're right, Carrie. I think that's dated, and we haven't picked up on that. So, and that is based on the most recent census, I think. Is that correct? Excellent. We are right on the end of the hour. Again, thank you, everyone, for tuning in, submitting some excellent questions, good conversation. Our panelists, ACTrees, for pulling this all together behind the scenes. We look forward to seeing a lot of you next week in DC, and certainly hope to either hear from you through ACTrees or directly. Feel free to reach out to me about any other questions you have about your advocacy work that's there on the ground. Give us some feedback on the webinar. Let us know what worked, what didn't, suggestions for future conversations around advocacy and policy work. And we appreciate your time and look forward to taking the most of this opportunity that's coming up next week. We certainly, there's a lot going on in the Hill, so it's actually a good time in a lot of ways to be descending. So thanks again. Sarah, is there anything else you need to do, or are we signing off?
I think we're all set. We just want to remind folks that there will be more briefings on these matters on Tuesday night for ACTrees members and on Wednesday morning for all participants. So this is a great introduction. Thank you to all of our speakers, and we'll be learning more about it and feel even more prepared next week.
Great, and it sounds like we'll be making some adjustments to some of our materials, and we'll get those back out to everyone too through the right channels. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.